Welcome everyone to Train Tuesday. I'm your host Jim Wiggin with Athearn and so glad you could join us. If you like the content that you're seeing on our channel, please do us a favor, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video such as this drops into your feed. It's exciting this time of year. It's summertime. I know a lot of you guys are out rail fanning. Maybe you're visiting relatives or having a good time working on your layouts because it has been pretty hot. It is nice to get inside and work on our layouts for a little reprieve. Also, this week, at the time of the shooting of this video, um, we will be celebrating a major holiday, Independence Day. So, for all of my Athearn fans out there that are currently in the States or maybe serving abroad or visiting abroad, I want to wish you all a happy and safe Independence Day, and may you have many more. Now, I've been busy this summer. I just came back from Nebraska as well as Galesburg, Illinois, and have had a chance to meet some of you. It was nice to meet Christian and Bill out at Galesburg Railroad Days. Saw those guys rail fanning, and we had a good time talking about Athearn and railroading in general. So when you see me out on the road, feel free to stop by and say hi. I always like to meet our fans in person. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know what we're going to be talking about next, and that is an all-new model from the Athearn Genesis line. That is the EMD SD50. Now, it's taken years of development work to get this model done. We've had it formerly in the ready-to-roll line, now called the Athearn line, but it's recently been upgraded to the Athearn Genesis line. Now, technically, it is not a warmed-over model, but it is a complete ground-up model. So there's lots of new features, a lot of new things to talk about, and I'm excited to share that with you tonight. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, get comfortable in our workshop chairs and grab the beverage of our choice. And let's get started with another Train Tuesday. So EMD introduced their new 3,500 horsepower SD50 in May of 1981 as part of their original planned 50 series. The SD50 was in essence a transition model of the 1970s era Dash 2 locomotives. Now, a little bit of background on this model. Originally produced by EMD as an immediate response to General Electric's Dash 7 line of locomotives, which were becoming more favorable with current roads providing more competition for EMD. While EMD's current SD40-2 model provided a reliable locomotive for most Class 1 railroads at the time, General Electric's transportation was gaining more inroads for the 3,600 horsepower Dash 7s. The Dash 7s boasted more modern technology, and GE Transportation was providing competitive financing and maintenance programs to assist purchasers of their offerings. While EMD's SD45 and SD45-2s with their 3,600 horsepower were successful, the large 20-cylinder engines were not fuel efficient. Now, this lack of efficiency, alongside reported issues of reliability, caused many railroads to rethink their motive power provider. This was further magnified in the 1970s when the fuel crisis impacted general transportation as well as the railroad industry. So in May of 1981, EMD unveiled the new SD50, which would feature an updated version of the V16-645 from the venerable SD40-2, upgraded to 3,500 horsepower at 900 RPM. The SD50 had a longer frame, had a much longer long hood than its predecessors. Other improvements came from moving the dynamic brake resistors for the dynamic brake grid from the traditional location above the prime mover to a cooler location located in front of the engine compartment's air intakes, thus closer to the electrical switchgear. This in turn separated them from other systems, resulting in a simplified maintenance for both the prime mover as well as the electrical system. A grand total of 426 units were produced when production ceased in February of 1986. Now we're pleased to introduce this all-new model, and now we're going to talk about the roads that we're going to be offering for this initial run of the SD50. Now keep in mind, if your favorite wasn't selected this time, rest with ease. We will be doing more roads in the future. But let's start with the roads that we're going to be talking about in this first run. And everything that I'm talking about, you have until uh, July 26th to place your pre-orders with your dealer of choice. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the Baltimore Ohio. Now, the Baltimore Ohio, part of the Chessie system at this time, ordered 20 SD50s between July and August of 1984. 43 went to the CNO in two different orders. However, B&O number 8576 through 8595 would be some of the last units to wear the chassis system enchantment blue, vermilion, and yellow. Many of the SD50s would soldier on into the CSX era and wear various patches before eventually receiving full repaints. So again, this is a brand new model. This is much more detailed than the former ready-to-roll models. Each Genesis locomotive for each road are going to have calling card details that are specific for that railroad, and chassis is one of those railroads. Here you can see the actual CAD drawing, and I'll share the CAD drawings for other roads as well, but this gives you an idea of the actual look of the model before paint has been applied to it. Now for this initial run, we're going to run 3 different road numbers. What you see here is the as-delivered versions of 8578, 8581, and 8595. Now specifically, these models are going to feature the Nathan K5 horn. They're all going to have 4,000-gallon fuel tanks. You'll notice that the bell is mounted on the long hood. These will have EMD HTC trucks with animated Timken bearings, the famous Chessie mail slot battery box doors. Also, this will have an early frame with diagonal pilot cutouts and rounded anti-climbers. Now, the art that is depicted within our media so far has been done with cooperation and full support of Chessie System Resources. So again, these are as delivered 1984 Chessie System, and these are part of our initial run. Now coming up next, we have the Rio Grande. So the Denver and Rio Grande Western, they purchased 17 SD50s from EMD in the late summer of 1984. Now these were built with the Chessie system specs, so they have some similarities. These units were delivered with the K5LA horns. Much like Chessie, they have the mail slot battery boxes and hood-mounted bells. However, the gyro lights, a Denver Rio Grande calling card, were not with the locomotives at first. However, they were soon added to the fleet of SD50s numbered 5501 to 5517 once they were officially on Denver Rio Grande property. Now, our models are going to include the familiar operating nose gyro lights. That's going to be included with the Tsunami 2 version. Another detail that we're going to have on these is the rail frogs that you see in this picture here. Again, some of the lighting features that we're going to talk about are going to be specific to the actual railroad that had those, and you're really going to see these come alive in the Tsunami 2 versions. So let's go ahead and take a look at the CAD drawing for the HO scale model version. And again, very similar to the Chessie order, but we're going to be adding that gyrolight light system package to the model. Now we're going to do 3 different road numbers for Denver Rio Grande. For this run, we're going to offer them as delivered, and they're going to be as delivered versions of 5501, 5510, and 5515. Now these models are going to have details such as the Nathan K5 horns, the 4,000-gallon fuel tanks. They'll also have a long hood mounted bell, and again, the nose gyro light. Now this is effect again that's only ready to go if you get the Tsunami 2 version. These will have EMD HTC trucks with animated Timken bearings, and like Chessie, these are going to have the mail slot battery box doors with added screens. This will have an early frame with diagonal pilot cutouts, and it will have rounded anti-climbers. Now, if you remember, we were talking about Chessie earlier as delivered. We're going to go a little bit further down into the 90s, specifically 1991 era. And Chessie is no more and has been replaced with CSX. Now, of course, CSX was formed when Seaboard Systems and Chassis combined, hence CSX. And these units, when they inherited them, were still pretty new. So when CSX was formed, the SD50s were only a few years old and still wearing their as-delivered chassis system paint. Eventually, however, as maintenance was performed, many of these patched units would receive a full YN2 paint scheme, either from EMD or CSX's own Huntington shop. Now, we are offering both versions for CSX modelers who modeled the early 1990s, and these will have subtle differences between them based on where they were painted. These SD50s are from the C&O 8553 to 8575 class, and they'll feature removed class lights, K5 horn, and expert-approved artwork and colors. Now, we're going to see in the CAD, there's some slight differences on here. Now, keep in mind that by 1991, classification lights were no longer used. They were obsolete, and the CSX model is going to show that. They're going to have their classification lights removed and plated. Now, we're going to be offering 4 different road numbers for CSX modelers, and they're going to be coming from paint shops, either EMD or Huntington. So let's talk about the specific units. So the first one that you see on your screen here is 8556. This is a Huntington repaint, and here's some of the differences that Huntington did versus an EMD paint job. Huntington would paint their anti-climbers black, and if you notice real closely, if you look at the CSX lettering on the body, you'll notice that it's slightly lower than some of the other placements. So the CSX body placement is a little different. You'll also know remove class lights on both ends, and the original style number board font is still used. 8536, however, is an EMD repaint, and they would paint their anti-climbers blue. Check out the CSX placement again. You'll notice that that is in the upper position versus the Huntington shops. And the class lights on both ends have been plated in CSX replacement style number board font. So a different font from Huntington's. Likewise, we're going to do 2 more EMD repaints. Here we see 8564 and 8567. And these will also feature the EMD repaint with blue anti-climbers, upper CSX body placement, class light plates on both ends, and CSX replacement style number board font. So an EMD and a Huntington, at first glance, they look very similar, but there are some subtle differences, and CSX modelers know this. That's why we want to include this. Again, we worked very closely with some experts in the field of CSX paint schemes and details. Midwesterners, don't worry, we've got you covered as well. Chicago Northwestern is our next road that we're going to be featuring with the all-new SD50. Now, Chicago and Northwestern purchased 35 SD50s between November and December of 1985, and they numbered them 7,000 to 7,034. Most of these units wore their as-delivered scheme into the 1995 Union Pacific purchase. We're offering this first run as they appeared when Chicago Northwestern first received them. They feature a cab strobe light, unique triangular antenna, early stepwells, and handrails without step guard. Let's talk a little bit about the CAD drawing that we're going to show next. And one thing I do want to mention, there were some folks that were commenting during the live feed a couple of weeks ago that these don't have winterization hatches. That is true. Keep in mind, these are as delivered when they were new on the property, so they're not going to have those winterization hatches, hence they were added later on. We're going to offer 3 different road numbers for Chicago Northwestern. Again, these are as they're delivered appearance. Here we've got 7004, 7015, and 7022. These models are going to feature the Leslie 3-chime horns. They'll also have EMD HTC trucks with Hyatt bearings. The Chicago Northwestern triangular antennas are also included in this run, as well as 4,500-gallon fuel tanks. These will have a frame-mounted bell and xenon strobe effect, again, only in the Tsunami 2 version. These will have late EMD battery box doors with dual louvers and the late frame with vertical pilot cutouts and blunt anti-climbers. Now keep in mind as I'm talking about these various different roads, there are some features that are only going to be available through the Tsunami 2. That's mainly a lighting effects such as gyro lights or xenon strobes. These are going to have functioning lighting effects such as number boards across the board of the releases, classification lights if the prototype still had them, and more. And we'll talk about all of the features of these SD50s in a moment. We still got two more roads that we're going to be talking about. Next, of course, is Missouri Pacific. Now, it's interesting to note that when Missouri Pacific took delivery of its 60 SD50s in November and December of 1984, they were numbered 5000 to 5059. And they were delivered in the corporate colors of Armor Yellow and Harbor Mist Gray. Now, Missouri Pacific was now part of the Union Pacific family in one of the largest mergers in history up to that point. Now, rail fans would call these Canaries, obviously because of their paint scheme. And at first glance, they look almost exactly like the corporate Union Pacific paint scheme. However, there are some distinguishing paint differences between the Missouri Pacific and Union Pacific locomotives. All of the Missouri Pacific locomotives featured the Missouri Pacific spelled out on the long hood in Missouri Pacific's own North Little Rock font. Also, the trucks were painted gray rather than silver. And finally, the anti-glare panel on top of the short hood was painted gray rather than UP's standard at the time green. Interesting to note that after that, UP adopted that practice and continues with that practice today. Now, after 1986, operations between the Missouri Pacific and Union Pacific were consolidated, and complete control was acquired by the UP in 1997, and the units were eventually repainted in full UP lettering. We're going to be offering Missouri Pacific here, and as you can see, got a CAD drawing of the Missouri Pacific units. There are going to be some specific details that we'll talk about here in a moment. We're going to be offering two road numbers of the Canaries, road numbers 5014 and 5049, and as they appeared from the 1984 as they were released. Now, these models will feature an as-delivered appearance. So again, if you're a modeler of MP in 1984, that's important to note. They're going to have a frame-mounted bell. They too will have a xenon strobe light. This again is functional through the Tsunami 2 decoder. 4,500 gallon fuel tank, and a brand new tooled Leslie 3-chime horn. Truck-mounted spare knuckles, EMD HTC trucks with animated Timken bearings, and late EMD battery box doors with dual louvers. Also, this is going to have a late frame. That means it'll have vertical pilot cutouts, and the anti-climbers will be blunt. And then finally, the last railroad in this initial release of the SD50 is the Kansas City Southern. Now, after experimenting with 4 testbed EMD SD40Xs built in 1979, Kansas City Southern ordered the first production run of the SD50, produced from late May into June of 1981. They featured an early notched frame, rounded blower housing, large exhaust stack, dual cab mounted strobes, and a front warning light with offset headlights. Kansas City Southern numbered their fleet of SD50s number 704 to 713 and were painted in the then standard white scheme. While 705 was wrecked and off the roster by February of 1994, the others soldiered on, many receiving the gray ghost scheme before either being sold off or retired. So these are going to be the earliest of the bunch, and this is the 1981 order of Kansas City Southern. The biggest thing you'll notice is a rounded blower. Subsequent SD50s would have a more angular blower. You'll also see that the cab is all new to include the offset headlights and the warning light. Now we're going to be offering 3 different road numbers, including 704, 707, and 713. These again are going to be offered as delivered appearance. So they're going to have a frame mounted bell. They'll include a Leslie 5-chime horn, 4,500 gallon fuel tank, the newly tooled offset cab headlight with warning light. Again, this is an effect that's available in the Tsunami 2 equipped versions. EMD HTC trucks with Hyatt bearings, early EMD battery box doors with single louvers, dual xenon strobe lights, again, effect available in the Tsunami 2 equipped versions. And this is going to have the early walkway with notch frame and rounded blower housing, and also a large exhaust stack. So those are the roads that we're going to be offering. Let's talk a little bit about the new features that these SD50s are going to come. And keep in mind some of these features are going to be across the board and dependent upon the prototype. So again, this is new tooling. So basically from the rails up, these are brand new locomotives. New bodies with correct door placement and weld marks. So again, this is new tooling, so the bodies are new and they're going to have the correct door placement as well as weld marks. These are going to include either an early or a late handrail placement. These will include either an HTC or FlexiCoil trucks with Hyatt or animated Timken bearings. These will have the correct dynamic brake intake and exhaust grill placement, single or dual conduit fans, rounded or blunt anti-climbers with or without MU cutouts. These will have either a 4,000 or a 4,500 gallon fuel tank, and they'll of course include all of the fuel fillers, fuel gauges, and breather pipes, correct gauge and filler placement. These will have operating class lights. Now keep in mind those operating class lights are equipped based on the prototype. If the prototype did not have those classification lights, then your model will not have them. These will all have operating number boards. And of course, there's going to be the other Athearn Genesis details that you've already known, such as coupler cut levers, MU hoses, train line hose. You will have a see-through cab windows with a full cab interior. You'll have walkway tread, windshield wipers, lift rings, wire grab irons, sander lines, and if you have a choice, you've got a choice of two. You have the DCC ready or the Tsunami 2 equipped. For those who want to go with the DCC ready, keep in mind these feature the quick plug and play technology with a 21-pin NEM connector. For those who want to go for the full experience of the Tsunami 2 sound equipped decoder versions, these will have that on board. It'll have a Soundtrack Tsunami 2 sound. Coupled with that will be dual cube speakers, and sound units will operate in both DC and DCC. However, keep in mind, in order to take advantage of all those lighting effects, it's best to operate these on a DCC layout. Full DCC functions available when operated in DCC mode. All functions are NMRA compatible in DCC mode. And of course, that known Genesis precision slow speed control. You also have the option of programming a multiple unit MU lash up with lead unit only horn, bell, and lights. Now there's more details. You can check those out at athearn.com and check the new announcements to see what other items we've added to this. There's a whole page of details on this. Again, keep in mind, a lot of the scale details and a lot of the lighting features are dependent on the prototype. So if you're interested in a particular road, go ahead and read on our website all of the particular items that are associated with that model. So that with that being said, you have until July 26th. It's a Friday to place your pre-orders on this model. And I'm sure a lot of people are excited about this model. So you're going to want to go ahead and get that pre-order in because they will sell out quick when they get here. And you don't want to be disappointed and left with nothing. So go ahead and pre-order with your dealer of your choice. And again, you have till Friday, July 26th. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me on this edition of Train Tuesday. I want everybody out there that's celebrating the 4th of July, I want you to be safe. and have a good time. We'll be back next time with another Train Tuesday. We'll be talking about some more items from the July announcement. Until I see you once again, I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens. Take care, everyone.